إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يقول سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن الكريم بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم مثل الذين اتخذوا من دون الله أولياء كمثل العنكبوت اتخذت بيتا وإن أوهن البيوت لبيت العنكبوت لو كانوا يعلمون. My dear respected brothers and sisters, in today's khutbah, let me talk about an example Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is striking in His speech in the Quran. When we speak, if we want to emphasize a point, a good speaker will bring examples. We learn this, if you all, the people who go to Toastmaster training programs, they will tell you, in your speech you need to bring examples, stories to make or illustrate a case. So we find that inspiration from the Quran actually. Because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to emphasize a point, to send you a message, or to reinforce an idea, He brings lots of examples and lots of stories. We see this abundantly in our Quran. So one of the examples Allah says here, to drive an important message, a social science, it's about our home. So it's not actually, it's talk about the home, not the houses that we live in. So this is different between the house and the home. We know that. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings here is, if you read this ayah, that's in Surah Al Ankabut, it's about the spider. So the whole surah is named out of this, from this ayah. So this ayah is very powerful, very strong message. There is a very strong message in this ayah. So let's see whether we can understand this ayah. Allah says here, مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ كَمَثَلِ الْعَنكَبُوتِ. The example of those who follow or who takes other than Allah as their awliya. We know the word, the wali, is someone who guides us, someone who is close to us. So it's a very powerful word with very deep meaning. So if we take the other ideologies or other cultures, or the other way of life or other deens as instead of Allah's deen, so our houses or our homes will be like this. He brings an example of the spider for that. مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ كَمَثَلِ الْعَنكَبُوتِ. It's like a spider. So what does this spider does? اتَّخَذَتْ بَيْتًا. So this spider, it builds his own house. So here there is a very, very important point we need to find scientifically actually. Allah doesn't say ittakhadha baytan. Right? If it is ittakhadha baytan, it's masculine, isn't it? But here it says ittakhadhat baytan. It's a feminine word. So now we know in science, the male spider doesn't contribute to the spider's house. In building that house, the male spider doesn't contribute. It's the job of a female spider. So Allah says that the female spider, ittakhadhat baytan, it builds, it doesn't say it's dar, and actually you can say dar, right, or bait. So both, normally we translate as house. But we have to understand, we have to do the tadabbur of this ayah. To reflect on this ayah, there are so many things to learn.
Sorry, I'm having trouble with the connection.
It says, ittakhadhat baitan. So this female spider, it takes its house. And then Allah says, wa inna, indeed, awhanal buyut, the weakest of the home, la baytul ankabut. It's again the harf la is there. That is to reinforce. La baytul ankabut is indeed the home of the spider. Law kanu ya'lamun. So it's basically Allah is saying that you need to know the knowledge to understand these things. So what is this? Now, when you just superficially see this ayah, we may think, yes, if you see the spider web somewhere in a corner of our houses or somewhere, so that we can just remove that with our hands. So it's a weakest home anyway. It's a weak house. So why Allah is bringing that example here? Is it worth mentioning as an example here? And it ends as law kanu ya'lamun. For you need to have some knowledge to understand this. So what is the wisdom behind that? So let's go a bit deep into that and see what happens in this spider's house. And is it actually weak? Now, the science tells you what is the strongest material on the face of the earth? It's the spider's silk. So that's the strongest material. Normally, a 1 foot steel can be stretched to 2 feet. But the spider's silk, apparently you can stretch that to 6 feet. The distensibility or extendability is very, very strong. So it's very strong. If you want to see that the comparison between the steel and the spider's web, you can check in, this Mythbusters. They have the YouTube, there's a channel, Mythbusters. The students, children, they're very fond of watching these channels because there's lots of scientific experiments they do. In that they check the strength of the spider silk and the steel, and they prove that the spider's silk is much more stronger than steel. That's actually is the strongest material you can find. That is why from the spider's silk web, they even make the bulletproof jackets. So it's so strong that they make bulletproof jackets out of spider's silk. So that is the strongest material on the face of the earth. So then why Allah says that is the weakest home? So here, Allah doesn't say that it's the weakest house. He didn't use the word dar, he used the word bait. It's not awhanal diyari, it's awhanal beauty. So this is the different. We may be having a very strong house built using all this concrete and everything, but that house will not make the life inside a strong life. So we need to understand these two concepts of the house and the home. We may be living in the strongest houses, but in that strongest house, a family may live that may be the weakest home. We see now one of the documentaries we saw in BBC documentary in one of the famous palace, very strong house, but the princess who lived there attempted suicide 7 times. So maybe the house is the strongest, but the home was the weakest. So that you find here. Allah didn't say that this is the in awhanal, this says beauty, not awhanal diyari. So it's not Allah is not talking about the structure. That is not weak. Actually, that structure is the strongest material on the face of the earth. That's the strongest house. But what is the weakest thing there? It's the home that is weak. What happens in that? Have you heard about this, the black widow spider? You can Google it and see. It's so interesting. There's a spider called black widow. So this spider obviously makes its own, it builds its own house, and it stays in the middle of that house. And that house, that black widow, that female spider is the boss there. In that house, what happens is the male spider is a visitor. So the male spider comes home for mating, and what happens is after the mating, they both will have fight, and at the end, the female spider will kill the male spider, and the male spider will die, and the female spider will eat the male spider. So you can have sex only at the expense of your death. That happens in the spider's house, the home. And then after that, sometimes you get spiderlings. When the spiderlings, these tiny spiderlings, if they are hungry, they get onto the mother and eat the mother. So what happens here is, there's no love between the father and the mother. There's no understanding between the father and the mother. There's domestic violence inside. There's no cooperation. Even the building the house, it's all done by the lady spider. There's no cooperation from the father for the male side. But we know that الرجال قوامون على النساء. That's what the Quran says. We are responsible. It's not that we have the authority, but it's basically الرجال قوامون على النساء is it's explained in a very detail. So if you study that ayah, you'll find that we are responsible for ladies, for our children, for our girls, for our wives. But here, so that is the sign of a stronger home. But here this home is so weak because there's no understanding between husband and wife. There's no love. There's no cooperation. And there's always a domestic violence. So that happens between husband and wife, and the parents and the children. Again, between parents and children, there's no understanding, there's no love, there's violence, there is, this sort of home is the weakest home. So, this concept of this home is so important. I think particularly when we come to the present context. Our children are living in a world, very negative world. But unless we have a positive home environment, then our children might slip. If we don't, the home is our first safety net. So if we don't have the very strong first safety net, our children might slip through that. If there's holes in that safety net, they may slip through that and then get into this negative world. So it's so important, we have to strengthen our first layer, that is our first safety net, that is home, and let's make our home the strongest home, not the weakest home that is mentioned in the Quran. So to make it the strongest home, we should make sure that our love between the husband and wife, understanding, cooperation is at the maximum level. So may Allah make our homes the strongest home, and may Allah make our children safe in this strongest home. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين أجمعين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.